Coming up today, the once bustling inter-Korean business park in the North Korean border town of Kaesong sits empty. All the South Korean businessmen have left and their assets and equipment have been frozen. These South Korean companies with operations at Kaesong call on the government to fully support them. They say their losses from the shutdown are devastating. Plus, world powers announce a nationwide cessation of hostilities in Syria. The US says full peace talks will resume in Geneva as soon as possible. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Friday, the 12th of February. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We are going to start, naturally, with the shutdown of the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex. All 280 South Koreans inside the industrial park were safely taken out and back in South Korea following North Korea's unilateral orders for them to leave ASAP. The area has been designated a military control zone now by the North Koreans, and the inter-Korean military hotline is also cut off, so tension is pretty high. For the latest, we connect to our Unification Ministry correspondent Connie Kim, who's standing by for us at the ministry. So, Connie, are we getting any details about what kind of support the companies operating at Kaesong might be getting off the South Korean government?
Well, Mark, the Unification Ministry just made the announcement about half an hour ago. It was also led by Lee Seok-jun, head of government policy coordination at the Prime Minister's office. Now, South Korea says it'll try its best to provide a swift and sufficient support for the 123 companies that have operated in the complex. Now, some of the support measures include extending the loan repayment period they received from the Fund for the Cooperation between North and South Korea. Seoul will also start the process of giving out insurance and push back the time period companies have to pay their utility bills, including electricity fees. Also, a one-on-one hotline will be established for the companies to provide needed support ASAP.
Well, it's good to hear that there are some support measures already coming out, even though the expulsion only happened late Thursday afternoon, South Korea time. In regards to the response measures from Seoul, from the South Korean government itself, following North Korea's abrupt shutdown of the complex, what are we hearing there?
Right. Well, Seoul has cut off the electricity supply to the inter-Korean Kaesong Industrial Complex. Now, this is the first response measure to Pyongyang freezing all South Korean assets in there. Seoul's strongest measure was to have all 280 South Koreans return to the South safely in the late hours on Thursday. Now, this is the first time Seoul has cut all electricity at the park. Even back in 2013, when the North withdrew all its workers, Seoul provided a tenth of the electricity usually provided. And it's important to note that if electricity is cut out, water will also be cut off, making it impossible for Pyongyang to operate facilities there. The Kaesong complex had remained somewhat immune to the turbulence of inter-Korean ties, but that doesn't seem to be the case any longer, as there are already concerns that the last vestige of South-North economic cooperation will close down permanently.
It's certainly a concern. And Connie, all inter-Korean exchanges are expected to come to a complete halt as well. Tell us what projects are at risk.
Right, Mark. Well, the first project at risk of being scrapped is the Dajin Hasan project that the government invested back in 2013. Now, this project is aimed to deliver Russian coal from the Russian train station of Hasan to North Korea's Dajin via a 54-kilometer railway, after which a Chinese bulk carrier was set to ship them to South Korea's southeastern port of Pohang. South Korea was set to pay North Korea for access to the port, but since this is another means for Pyongyang to earn cash, now this project seems highly unlikely to be completed. and civilian inter-Korean exchanges are not expected to resume anytime soon. The inter-Korean excavation project at the ancient historical site at Manoldae Palace in Kaesong during the Goryeo Dynasty has been halted, along with a project to create a unified Korean language dictionary. There are concerns that inter-Korean ties have regressed to the same state as when the inter-Korean hotline was first established 44 years ago. Well, this is all I have for now, Mark. Reporting live from the Unification Ministry, this has been Connie Kim.
Now, an emergency meeting is currently taking place at the Corporate Association of Kaesong Industrial Complex, which represents South Korean firms operating in the industrial park. They are expected to demand compensation from the Korean government. We're still getting details. They say the government made an irresponsible decision suspending operations at the park. We have our Kim Min-ji on the line from the association's headquarters in Western Seoul. Min-ji, you must be able to cut the tension there with a knife. How are things looking?
Mark, the meeting has gone on for just over 15 minutes now, and it's being held closed doors, so I don't have full details. But what I can tell you is that representatives from some 120 South Korean companies with production facilities at the Kaesong Industrial Complex are attending the meeting, and they plan to launch an emergency planning committee to discuss follow-up measures. And they're expected to discuss drawing up a special bill to support the companies, expanding financial support, and finding ways to support the workers who have been told to leave the complex. The association also held an emergency board meeting yesterday where representatives expressed their resentment of the South Korean government's decision to suspend operations. Chung Gi-sop, the head of the association, demanded that the government provide follow-up measures and compensate the companies for damages. And should it fail to do so, the association says it could take legal action.
Min-ji, for the business owners themselves, their livelihoods are on the line here. Some are solely based in Kaesong, so their business went from normal to completely gone, perhaps for good, in the space of 72 hours. Hard to imagine what they're feeling, but what kind of losses are the entrepreneurs facing?
Well, back in 2013, when the complex was shut down for some 160 days, South Korean firms reported a combined loss of over 1 trillion won, which is over $830 million US. Now, the association says companies are individually assessing the damages they are likely to suffer. The companies say the actual damages could be greater due to the losses incurred from losing business partners and their credibility. And on top of that, as North Korea has frozen all assets, companies had to leave the industrial complex empty-handed. Now, the association says it plans to find a way to reclaim finished products and raw materials to minimize the damages. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Min-ji. Now, these emergency meetings are taking place after what was an extremely stressful 48 hours or so for the South Korean business owners with factories in Kaesong for a wrap-up of what went down on Thursday, and it was rather dramatic. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Tension was palpable in the 29 hours between the time Seoul announced it was shutting down operations at the Kaesong Industrial Complex and the final South Korean crossed the border into the south. At first, all seemed well when North Korea agreed to Seoul's plan. South Korean businessmen were able to take as many goods and materials as they could to try to minimize the damage. The return of the South Koreans was going smoothly on Thursday morning, with one group after the other evacuated every 30 minutes. But the atmosphere changed in the afternoon when North Korea gave all the South Koreans 40 minutes to get out of the factory park. They were also told no belongings could be taken. Those who had been desperately trying to salvage what they could were forced to leave empty-handed.
I don't know what to do now. I couldn't bring anything back with me. I had to slip out while I was packing things up.
For one day, South Korean businessmen at the Kaesong Industrial Complex had a taste of what it might be like if the two Koreas were at war, due to the rapid expulsion and the confiscation of their assets. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, North Korea's long-range missile launch on Sunday and its fourth nuclear bomb test on January 6th has increased talks and willingness for the deployment in South Korea of a thing called THAAD, and it is a US-made anti-ballistic missile defense system. We are joined on the line now by Kwon Jang-ho. He is at the Defence Ministry in Seoul for us, where government officials are actually currently giving an update on the situation in regards to THAAD. Jang-ho, what information can you give us?
Hi, Mark. To put it simply, they said it's still early days on the deployment of THAAD. After recent events with North Korea, talks with the US for the missile defense system were said to have been stepped up, but government officials were quick to clarify that these talks were not in response to the recent missile launch. They reiterated that the THAAD missile system cannot be used against ICBM missiles, such as the one launched on Sunday. Military officials said that negotiations over the details of a possible deployment with the US are still ongoing.
Yes, well, it's a very controversial issue. They have plenty of differences to iron out. Not only that, but also getting China to perhaps agree to that deployment. But tensions have been rising sharply after the shutdown on Thursday, as we've been talking about, of the Kaesong Industrial Complex. Can you give us an update on any military movements we've seen on either side of the border since then?
Sure. So, although tensions have risen, it has been a relatively quiet night with no sign of any troop movement north of the border. After the North Korean regime designated the Kaesong Industrial Complex a military control zone and expelled all South Korean workers, the South Korean government heightened their military readiness levels. Military officials said last night that the military be ready for any provocations, but no action has been needed yet. This has been Kwon Jang-ho reporting from the Korea's Defense Ministry.
Now, South Korea's foreign minister has called for the cooperation of European countries and NATO members for joint measures in responding to North Korea's recent nuclear and missile threats. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference on Thursday, Yoon Byung-se said it was time for the international community to show zero tolerance to North Korea's unbridled provocations. He added that individual countries as well as international organisations can play an important role in addition to the UN Security Council's measures. Minister Yoon also met with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, where he urged China to step up its role as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. While the two agreed on the need to quickly adopt measures, Wang stressed a prudent response with the interests and concerns of neighbouring countries. World powers have agreed to push for a cessation of hostilities in Syria within 1 week and expand humanitarian aid beginning immediately. Han-dan has the details.
Top diplomats from the world's leading powers, including the U.S., Germany and Russia, reached a deal Friday morning that may signal the beginning of the end to the bloody conflict in Syria.
And I'm pleased to say that as a result, today in Munich, we believe we have made progress on both the humanitarian front and the cessation of hostilities front.
Kerry's comments came after 17 member nations of the International Syria Support Group held talks in Munich. The foreign ministers of Germany and Russia echoed Kerry's comments, agreeing they will make efforts to significantly reduce violence within a week. Kerry, however, added that the agreement would not apply to the fight against extreme jihadist groups, namely Islamic State and al-Qaeda's Syria branch, al-Nusra Front. He also said a UN task force will be set up to ensure the immediate expansion of humanitarian aid. The Syrian opposition is pleased with the deal.
We welcome the effort that our friends are making to relieve the Syrian people and must be for all Syrians.
The world powers also agreed the suspended peace talks involving both the Syrian government and the rebels should resume as soon as possible. Han-dan, Arirang News.
Now, Chair of the US Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, has conceded the possibility of a future downturn and left the door open to negative interest rates as recession fears continue to mount in the United States. Oh Soo-young reports.
Negative interest rates are not off the table. That's what Chairman to the US Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, said on Thursday during a semi-annual testimony at Congress. Yellen revealed that the Fed is re-examining the possibility of introducing negative interest rates after making sure that they would be workable in the US, should banks go south. This comes as fears of a recession in the world's largest economy are mounting, following global economic troubles and widespread market sell-offs. While acknowledging the protracted slump across markets, Yellen denied the Fed's rate hike is to blame for the current market meltdown of stocks and oil prices. The Fed raised its interest rate in December for the first time in almost a decade and forecast 4 additional hikes this year. Given the weakening global economy and market volatility, investors were skeptical that the Fed would follow through with its projections. But Yellen said that backtracking on a gradual rate hike is not what she considers the most likely scenario, reiterating the necessity of raising interest rates to keep tabs on inflation.
Still, ongoing employment gains and faster wage growth should support the growth of real incomes and therefore consumer spending. And global economic growth should pick up over time, supported by highly accommodative monetary policies abroad.
However, Yellen said it was uncertain when energy prices and the dollar would stabilize. On Thursday, global oil prices slipped even further, with March futures for West Texas Intermediate tumbling 4.5% to a 13-year low during the trading session. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now we have some news just coming in that Korea's tech-heavy KOSDAQ, which is Korea's version of the NASDAQ, if you will, with all the technology companies on it, has fallen below the 600-point mark. It's down 8.17%, or 53 points it shared in the morning session alone. This has triggered a sidecar, as they call it in the market. A sidecar refers to a rule that lets the bourse operator halt futures trading and also of equities during extreme market volatility. The Kospi is also sharply down as well. It's down 2.25% as of right now from Thursday's close. So we'll continue to monitor that throughout the day. And markets in Asia also dropped sharply on Friday. Japan's Nikkei tumbling 5.1% in early trading amid growing concerns over the health of the world economy. The US dollar also fell to a 15-month low against the Japanese yen on Thursday. The Nikkei dropped below the 15,000 mark this morning and currently sits at its lowest point in 16 months. Now, the recent big falls on US and European markets have rippled greatly across Asian markets this week, including, as we can see, with Korea's KOSDAQ and the main benchmark Kospi. Korea's trade minister has pledged government support for Korean firms looking to enter the Iranian market. Ju Hyung-hwan says a financial support system such as a tied loan arrangement will be set up to help local companies win orders in Iran. He added that a ministerial-level meeting is planned for later this month to open new business ties as well. Korea joined other countries in lifting sanctions against Iran last month. Tehran claims to have secured access to frozen funds of more than $100 billion from sanctions relief, which could spur massive investment. The minister said local companies should be able to make headway in consumer electronics and cosmetics. Now, exciting news. It's being hailed as a historic landmark in the world of science and what we know about the universe. Gravitational waves from colliding black holes have been directly detected for the first time ever. The existence of these waves is the last prediction of Einstein's theory of relativity to be verified. Park Jung-hong with the details.
It was a chirping sound that lasted just 1/5 of a second, but was music to the ears of scientists. Physicists in the U.S. say they have successfully tracked gravitational waves in space. At the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, or LIGO, announced the groundbreaking finding.
So these gravitational waves were produced by 2 colliding black holes that came together, merged to form a single black hole about 1.3 billion years ago.
The chirping seemingly confirms Albert Einstein's century-old hypothesis that gravitational waves exist. David Reitze said the signal was recorded nearly simultaneously at multiple locations on September 14, 2015. As time lapsed, the frequency of the signal also went up.
What was amazing about this signal is that it's exactly what you would expect, what Einstein's theory of general relativity would predict for two big massive objects like black holes in spiraling and merging together.
Scientists refer to the gravitational waves as the ripples in the pond of space-time, in which the gravity of large objects warps both space and time. According to Reitze, the waves stretched and compressed space around Earth like jello. While the discovery has no immediate consequence, scientists say it opens a new window on the universe, as until now they had solely been dependent on light to observe the cosmos. It's hoped to provide a whole new approach to observing the universe and unlocking secrets about mysterious objects like neutron stars and black holes. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
Well, with that, that's where we're going to have to leave it on this Friday afternoon here in Seoul. If we don't see you, do have a wonderful and relaxing weekend. Goodbye.